There Is No Evil is an Iranian film that they actually had to shoot this in secret, and it had to be smuggled out of Iran, because even the makers of the film, the creators of the film, the directors, writers, the actors felt that it was pornographic. And there's not a single sex scene, there's not a single nudity involved. Many of you are not aware of this part of the history of Iran. I'm not an expert in the history of Iran. I'm still studying it. There's a lot to learn about them. But in 1979, there was a revolution that happened. And the goal was to actually overthrow the country's monarchy and put up a new form of government, preferably a democratic one. But when the forces favoring an Islamic state consolidated their grip on the leadership, they didn't want to let go. So they had to maintain control, and they did it by a wave of execution. So they executed people one after the other. They executed anybody, communities, people, individuals, groups that had the possibility or inclination to oppose the government, that kind of government. So this film is actually a look at the state-sponsored execution from the point of view of those that were implementing the executions or were actually doing the killings. So after that part of their history, in the following decades, a new form of quasi-execution happened. They called it the chain murders. This involved the execution or killing of writers, intellectuals, influentials, anybody who could oppose the government, anybody speaking out against the government. They would just kill those people. And that actually continued even in the 90s, when Iran's cinema and literature and the entertainment industry started gaining momentum. There were prize-winning films by directors like Kiarostami. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Kiarostami. So that's a director. So they were the entertainment, the film industry, and the literature industry were emerging. But even then, the executions were actually happening. So There Is No Evil. This movie, There Is No Evil, is actually a look at that, in the rising state-sponsored execution. It became so bad that Iran actually just became second to China in state sponsored execution. However, it's not a direct criticism of the actual law or regulation or practice. It was more of an examination of the country's soul. The country that permits this legal bloodshed. It sort of encourages us as individuals. It's not as a nation, not as a citizen, not even as a region, but us, meaning you, me, as individual, as a person. How do you live knowing that this is the kind of country that you're nurturing, that this is the kind of society that you are nurturing? Have always thought, and it sort of like puts me in it forces me to also look at the kind of country that I am living in, that I'm a part of. Sorry, I'm not living there, but I'm a part of it, which is the Philippines. This is the kind, no matter how inactive I am in that country, I'm still nurturing that, whether through action or inaction, I'm still nurturing that kind of country. Am I okay to live my life knowing that this is the kind of society that I am supporting? I've always thought that respect towards human life is the one thing we all have in common, like the whole world has in common. It doesn't matter your religion or your faith or the lack of it. Even if you don't believe in God or some sort of a supreme being, instinctively, you know that you can't just take someone's life. Even if you're a hired murderer, you still have this respect towards human life enough for you to not just get a gun and shoot somebody. You still have that instinct to try and preserve human life. So when taking people's lives become so much and become so common, you know that there's something damaged and that there's something wrong. People are innocent until proven guilty, and that's how it's supposed to be. I know that's hard for the victims, that's hard for the families of the victims or people who love the victims. It's very, very hard, but there's due process, and justice has to be fair and it has to be fast, and only until then should we execute the punishment. Before then, we must respect life, and it's not just the actual mortality, it's not just the breathing of somebody, but the actual quality of human life. And I think that's why this movie is so powerful, that even though, because just because the jump off point of the movie is actually the executions from the executions from the point of view of the executioner, but the narrative actually unfolds into how these executioners lives and the minute they kill somebody. And there's nothing more powerful than that, because it forces us to realize, for some of us it's so hard to relate, because maybe because we're living in a country where this kind of executions don't happen, or maybe we are alienated from it, but because this movie makes us realize that life isn't just about breathing, it's not just about sheer mortality, but the quality of it. It makes us realize that just because we don't pull the trigger, just because we don't stab somebody to death, it doesn't mean we do not execute people. The minute we judge somebody, the minute that we force somebody into doing something that they don't like, the minute we discriminate, we stereotype, we defame, we destructively criticize, when we join a mob against somebody, we execute them too. We also execute people. We may not be taking away somebody else's ability to breathe, but we are taking away their dignity, and for some, that's even worse. And so I highly recommend this film. There is no evil, or also known as Satan doesn't exist. If you don't know where to access it, if you don't know where to watch it, hit me up and I got you.